for clicking on the video. In this track, we talked about tech and democracy. We're joined by Zak Tomich and Farhad Mohit, both creators of The Good Party, which is a tech platform that empowers independent candidates for political office. We discussed topics such as transparency and the role that young people play in digitizing democracy. And I know that you are going to absolutely adore this conversation. So without further ado, here is the track. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Trek. The Trek is a Civics Unplugged series where community members participate in meaningful discussions on topics that are too often neglected when thinking about building the future. Through prompting questions and provocations, we venture together into complex but important conversations related to building the future and democracy. We understand that this work requires ongoing dialogue, but it's a journey worth trekking through. I'm Madison. I'm a high school senior from Borgaro, Oklahoma, joined by some of our community members and two special guests, which you will hear from in just a moment. And so today we're talking about tech and democracy, and we start off with a word association. So when you see your name up on the screen, give a brief introduction and say your 1 to 3 words.
Well, hey everyone, my name is Ashley. I'm 17 from Vancouver, Washington. When I think about tech and democracy, think about inclusion. I think tech can enable like a lot more people to participate in democracy, whether that is like, like online voting, or even like, I know last track that we talked about tech and democracy, like we talked about like how like cars and transportation are a form of technology, and like how leaders in those sectors have responsibility to contribute to democracy as well, not just like social media tech people. But yes, that is a word. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Chabu Kapumba. I'm 19 and a first year at the University of Toronto. And when I think about tech and democracy, the word that comes to mind is underutilized. I don't think we're taking enough advantage of the tech that exists. And we're also not really taking a forward-facing approach in terms of, really taking advantage of like the tech that's being developed right now.
Hi everyone, I'm Julia. I'm 23 years old. My word would be intertwined for obvious reasons. Like as we become more intertwined day to day, obviously democracy does as well, but also to Chabu's point, very interested to see kind of like how our democracy is up to date with tech in terms of like other countries, especially in the future, and how we're going to utilize that to its advantage.
Hi everyone, my name is Bernardo. I'm a Mexican junior in high school, and I think tech and democracy, I think it's an evolution. The tech is evolving in every aspect in our lives, such as sports, such as media, and now it's getting to democracy. So I think it's part of an evolution.
Hi, I'm Farhad. I'm with The Good Party, and I'm next, right? Or should I?
Yeah, go.
I'm a tech entrepreneur, so I've been doing this since way before you guys were born, and I've made some businesses in the space. BizRate was one early ratings company. The next was Shopzilla, price search engine. Last one you probably might be more familiar with is called Flipagram. Flipagram lets you put media and music together. I went and got all the rights from all these record companies and put it all together, and then we sold that to a company called ByteDance that took our team and mixed it with Musical.ly, who I helped set up as well, and they created TikTok. So that was sort of my last thing. But then now I'm full time with The Good Party. At The Good Party, the 3 words that I had that I was going to use for today's word association is we are all free software for free elections. So the first word I was going to use was good. Good is people are good. Technology can be good too. It's very important to understand that. That's why democracy is a good thing. Free is the next word that I was going to use, and it's because power and money corrupt people and they corrupt systems. All the negative things you hear about social media and other things also have come from the lack of free piece of it. So you have to make something that's good, technology it's good, make it free, and then leverage is the last one that I would use. It's an incredible, powerful, if you make good free technology, it can really change the world. And you have a situation here in the democratic system here in the US that there are two sort of duopoly of power and money are sort of locked in place, red and blue, and you need some type of a lever to get them out. I think technology can be that lever, and especially if it's free and especially can be used by a lot of people. So that's what we're trying to do. Joe.
Love that. Hey, oh, sorry. What, Jack, go ahead. Oops, forgot.
Yeah, so my name is Zak Tomich. I know it looks like Zach, but it is Jacques, believe it or not. And I'm also with the Good Party. I spent a decade working on the inside of government and politics. I worked in the legislative branch in Capitol Hill for 5 years, and then I worked in the executive branch for a governor for another 5. I'm also a lawyer once upon a time, and so kind of have a good feel for the judicial branch. And I kind of take all of those together and think about, you know, what we're trying to build with the Good Party, what we are building with the Good Party. And when I do this association with tech and democracy, I come back to 2 words, competition and engagement. And so to me, the opportunity with technology in our democracy is to inject real competition in terms of the people that are running for office to represent us. Right now, there is not real competition. It's actually, you know, there's some good research out there, and, you know, the term duopoly is one that's being used as the Republicans and Democrats, the red and the blue, have a kind of a moat around competition, and they just kind of protect themselves. And engagement, you know, I think about that from the citizen perspective. And, you know, with technology, you know, one of the things we're measuring across every use of technology in every domain is engagement. And I think about how our politicians and our elected people actually don't really think about measuring engagement in any real meaningful way besides, you know, do I get reelected every 2, 4, or 6 years? So those are the 2 big words that come to mind for me.
Thanks, Jacques. Mine are can shift incentives. So the right technologies, I believe, can really shape for the better the incentives that govern the actions of political actors. And this is why I and anyone I think that's found out about the Good Party's work and vision is excited about it.
Yeah, and to so many of your points, I would say that my word associations are ahead and misunderstood, just because technology is so ahead of government, because it's government, the way it's structured now isn't necessarily created in a way that makes it able to easily evolve, and then misunderstood because so many people in government don't have a good understanding of modern technology, and in that same breath don't understand how to best utilize it to maximize the basically efficiency and quality of government as a whole. So yeah, does anyone have a provocation or question they want to start us off with? If not, I have one. So I want to ask, right now, where specifically is tech underutilized in democracy?
How do we jump in? You just jump in, or you put your hand up?
Just jump in.
Go ahead.
I would say it's you know, my whole career I've been disrupting sort of using tech to disrupt some old and stodgy kind of industry, and it's basically everywhere that it's being. I think it starts from the dearth of talent that's putting time into democracy type tech. because it is not, as lucrative, and most of the money and most of the people are, in tech are younger. Some of them are building careers, so running after the almighty dollar. So I think there's not a lot of talent in this area, and then I feel like the systems are deliberately almost arcane. So, but if I were to say where is it that's underutilized, especially, I think the big potential here is with the younger, what I call digital natives, people born after 1981 who are native with technology. They do everything. You are them. You do everything online. You do your groceries. You do your, your dating. You do your socializing. You do everything. And when it comes suddenly to voting or something like that, you have to register like with pen and paper, go to some place. It's so backward ass, and it doesn't appeal to the audience. So the tools you have for everything else, you don't have for technology. So to put it in context, that this is the election that the digital natives overtook the boomers and older people born in 1964 or older. I can call them older too because I'm younger than that. There's like 100 million people who are eligible but don't vote, and a lot of them, disproportionate number of them, are young digital natives. So I feel like if you could get digital natives like yourselves like excited about the possibility of powerful transformation through government, which is what it's supposed to happen, democracy itself, it would be an incredible shift in US, and then I think that leads the rest of the world, because our whole goal here isn't just to build for the US. We build an open source system for everybody. So, but we recognize US leads.
Anyone else want to jump in on this question?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. First of all, I think it's really cool that you kind of framed our generation as digital natives, because by identifying as digital natives, anything that's like not born out of digital spaces is something that doesn't, like, we almost like don't understand or we're not familiar with, which means a lot of democratic systems are things that we don't have a lot of fluency in.
Well,
Which is interesting to think about. But when I also think about like how tech is underutilized in democracy, for me, a lot of my tech experiences are grounded in the fact that like it's just a way to connect to a lot of people at once, or often and frequently. And I think that our democratic systems need to be more reflective of like people and individuals, and like community experiences. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity to utilize tech in a way where you're almost like gaining familiarity with smaller communities, with larger communities, with lived experiences across, our democratic systems and beyond. And so I think that we're not really using it in that way to like better understand the people, which should be integral to all democratic processes.
All right, anyone have another question or provocation to pose?
I think like kind of the opposite of this is, do you guys believe that there's anything that should not be digitized within the government? Because I think even little stuff like me purchasing something online, in the back of my head, I'm always scared about data breaches or whatever it is. So even though we are becoming more entwined, is it safer to keep some things not in that realm?
I think instinctively, I want to say yes, 100%, just because like we've seen how breaches in technology have resulted in like a lot of really big problems. And so like why introduce new problems to an already flawed democratic system? But I think that it has less to do with like tech and issues in tech, and more to do with the fact that there's not a lot of like protection around data, or there's not a lot of investment in like, letting data be used in a way that like you can be rest assured that there won't be tech breaches, or in the event of that, there's like steps to kind of reconcile with that or resolve it. So I think that like right now, there are definitely things that we can't digitalize because we don't have enough protection around them. But if we were to create that infrastructure, I don't see why not for a lot of things.
We have
Yeah.
this. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
We have this initiative with the Good Party. As one of our tenets is accountability for folks who will be Good Party representatives, and that means that they have to be transparent with all the have their meetings online, so we can see who they're meeting with, and then closed caption, searchably archive, and Word kind of map their meetings so that anybody could look up after the fact. If there's something controversial, they can look back and see. And so transparency is a big deal, and digitizing that. When you do that, inevitably people say, what about really important super secret things that are essential to our national security? And so absolutely there will be some of those, but it's like sunlight is what gets you all the heebie-jeebies. The creepy crawlers have to run for cover when they see that, right? So you kind of want to be as transparent as possible first. We can do a lot more good by being transparent, and also taking people into office who know they're have to be transparent, so they don't even get tempted to go down these corrupting things that happen behind closed doors. But there are certain things you can imagine that you wouldn't want to have completely transparent right away, right? So I would go the opposite of what we're doing right now, which almost everything is being kind of written off as a secret or national security thing, and say that almost everything was better with transparency in a democracy, especially in a democracy where you can scale your systems so that every single person doesn't have to look at every piece of content, but just even with 1% or 0.5% of people checking some pieces out, you're able to kind of have a check and balance on everything, so that everybody's kind of alerted if something fishy is going on very quickly, and prevents that from happening. So there are some things legitimate, but I would say right now the pendulum is way the wrong way, where we're actually going after whistleblowers and people like that for illegitimately, and making them suffer for actually bringing transparency and digitizing kind of things that should be secret.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that reminds me of one that's related to that. I mean, when I worked in the public sector, I remember when there was a sort of a open data movement started to take foot, and I think some of that came out of the the Obama White House, and then a lot of states or a handful of states were adopting it. But the idea was, how much data can we get out there and open publicly? And the mindset, the kind of the catchphrase there was open by default. And that struck me as incredibly useful in the public sector domain, in the democracy domain. Open by default. Our democracy should be open by default. And then we can assess realistically, all right, is there anything that's truly a personal security issue, or a private, or a national security issue, or a state security issue? But our elected people to public office, the mindset should be open by default, and then we can work from there. I think it literally is the opposite today. It's everything is closed unless we decide to open it up if it suits our.
That's so interesting, the idea of the default, because when people do share things, at least and I know I'm not alone, assume that they're using it for political gain, right? They're sharing this strategically, and they're like probably sharing a half truth at that. Yeah, and yeah, so I like that the Good Party is thinking a lot about what are the defaults of the people that it agrees to help empower with tools, because the precedents that are currently set, ironically, in our democracy are very anti-democratic. But the fact that it has been a precedent allows for people to lean on those precedents.
Well, you don't have another option.
Yeah.
That's both parties agree that they should keep being both parties and nobody else. So as long as you don't have another choice, then all you're left is lesser of two evils, and so lesser of two evils is what it is. It's still evil. It's just lesser of, and then you can gradually get more and more less evil, but just lesser than the next set. So that's how it's kind of been spiraling, and I'm being a little maybe dramatic with it, but it's not too far from the truth. When you have 1% of elected officials who have more money coming from small donors than big donors, means 99% of your elected officials are paying attention and listening to the big money. Now, also, by the way, 90 some odd % of them get reelected based on how much money they raise right now. That's so your choices are who the money wants you to have, and their job, in many ways, is to keep their position so that they can keep getting reelected by paying attention to those people, by keeping everything else that might be unsightly or not so perfect out of the public discourse. So it's one of the things the good party is trying to do is use technology as a lever to bring additional choices, as Jacques kind of mentioned, on competition, if you would. And if you do that, then what you can do is have, an ordinary person who's saying, like, I have no reason not to be transparent. As an example, I'm going in as a servant. I'm your representative. You should know what's happening. I have no problem. I'm not trying to get elected by, some other secondary agenda with, big money behind me. Anyway, that's
well. The cool thing is, if you're running through a kind of conventional party sort of pathway, your hands are tied in so many different ways. So it's like it's only smart that someone that's running independently or in a third party does things that people that are running as like through the traditional duopoly pathways can't do, right? So transparency is a competitive advantage that I would imagine that a lot of independents are not taking advantage of.
At the moment, independents are thinking about, well, I'd love to be Green Party representative, or I'd love to be libertarian. That's how all my leanings are. But am I going to pick red or blue? And if I pick red, and I'm totally against some policy that the Reds have, how do I kind of minimize that so they don't, so I don't get, so they're thinking about, just even as they run, there is this idealist, like, I'm still going to run as a Green no matter what, and then that falls into the camp of, like, also ran 1% of the vote, kind of like wasted effort. And then there's the people who are Green, as an example, but run on blue because that's the best we can do. That's, as an example, Shahed Buttar out of San Francisco is a Green running, under the blue, because that's the only thing that he's thought of, the only path he has. And so that it's a slippery slope, though, when you think about what parts of your platform you're going to compromise, and how are you going to make yourself appealing to blue while you're trying to be. And this AOC is in a somewhat of a similar predicament, as she tries to be justice and Democrat. They kind of don't go together.
For sure.
Certainly not at the top of their party, So
Sure.
it is a weird situation. And hopefully they won't have to make those compromises if we're able to show a credible pathway to being elected on the strength of your ideas and the integrity of your campaign without the need for money. That would be an exciting day for America and for democracy everywhere, actually.
Right, and that sets a new precedent that other people can feel empowered by. I want to call attention to, I want to give Ashley the floor for something she wrote in the chat. I thought it was pretty profound.
I was just building on something that I think you said about like, when people get to choose what they want to share, like they are holding the power on what they're revealing to you. But I think like the opposite of signaling is just having all the information out there. So the power is in other people's hands to look at all that information and decide who you are, instead of just listening and accepting whatever you tell them. So it's just
Right.
giving the power to other people.
right? And then people can use that like source data to form their own valid narratives about you that could be better than any like narrative that you could create on your own, or like it could appeal to all sorts of different people because you are a complex individual.
I think that like a pitfall of a lot of like social media or like media spaces where a lot of information is shared is the fact that like it's always programmed towards an algorithm, and an algorithm over emphasizes a particular point for the sake of like keeping someone on the platform. So when Ashley kind of brought up like putting all the information on the table, it would be really interesting to see, without like any intervention of an algorithm, what people naturally gravitate towards paying attention to, or like what as a collective we tend to emphasize amongst, you know, all this data that's on an even plane. Because I can't even think of an instance where like social media content exists and then all the information is there, but there isn't like a particular point that's kind of being pushed your way, if that makes sense, where it's all kind of just like on an even ground or standing.
One thing to keep in mind, I mean, it is, I've had a lot of learnings in this space. The first company I did was called BizRate. BizRate was, you know, one of the first large scale customer ratings companies. So right at the dawn of 5-star ratings and stuff, we're right in there building those systems out. And we, you know, I was very much, I thought BizRate is going to kill marketing altogether. If people have information along 10 dimensions of service from other people about who's good at what and how, and we're continuously getting this data, you don't even need to know the name of these companies that you're going to do business with. Who cares who's giving you the digital camera, delivering it, as long as you know the cost is good, the service is good, everything else. So it was a painful study for me, a lesson for me of the fact that if you put all the data out there, actually lots of people get information overload, and they just bulk. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to look at it. When we had 20 choices, we had like I don't know, let's say 80% bulk rate. When we took it to 5 choices, it was 25%, that's 50% bulk rate. And then I tried dropping the names of the, who cares if it's Walmart or Sears or whatever the heck it is. We move the names, big drop off. You put the names on, and paradoxically, when you put the people who could afford to pay the most on top, because that was a business sort of a discussion, people like that. They recognized all the names on top. It wasn't these weird rinky-dink kind of high service, low cost kind of operators. And it's a difficult thread, to kind of a needle to thread, to get enough information, but not too much, and don't overwhelm people with choice, but make it easy. That's, and in some respects, why we're going down the free software path, on the one side, so we're not selling anything. And then on the other side, we're looking for good people who want to represent others for a short period of time. They don't know career politicians and anything else. So you're kind of relying on, this sort of good person with a transparent kind of a thing and a good platform that is free to be able to kind of do much better than what we have already. But we're not trying to, give either people too many choices or try to, have some kind of other conflicting thing that we're a secondary agenda that is actually the main reason why we're doing something, so ad dollars or subscriptions to the good party or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that this is helping me realize that elected officials who want to be transparent aren't in a super good position to do so. I mean, if you think about like what Gary said about a lot of people think when they're transparent that it's virtue signaling, and it's just because like, I don't know, like how do you make a system more transparent? I think that would be very hard, and it seems that it has to start with individuals. Like I think of Audrey Tang, who is the digital minister of Taiwan, and like every single meeting of hers is like recorded and you can access it. But like if politicians were to start doing that here, like as Farhad mentioned, that there might be like an information overload, or like as Garrett, just like there's so much to consider. And so it's crazy to think that the people who could be doing the right things might be putting themselves in a worse position.
Well, so what this is making me realize is that you have to use the tools that are powerful. Like, I mean, humans respond to stories, right? But this is like part of the narrative. Like how many people, if some really popular candidate or like just some candidate, right, that has a some candidate that has the typical like nice political website and like ads and nice story one-liners, etc. Like even if they did show the like even if they made a bunch of data transparent, how many people would actually go through that data? But also, it doesn't matter, right? Because now they have a one-line narrative as well that's like, I'm extremely transparent. You know, so that's like the cool coupling, where like people are lazy, they're not going to look into the details, but the like the 0.01% that do will actually give you respect and might write a nice article about you, right?
And well, if also if you're transparent, there is a situation where somebody can go look up something you did, and if there's a controversy or something else, especially that's why I said it's closed captions, searchably archived. So people obviously are not going to tune into their representatives every single meeting, but if that information is there, if the word cloud is out there, right. Imagine we had a scandal involving the Ukraine earlier, you know, and you could just type in Ukraine and see every single time that was mentioned in a meeting with your representative. And so you could go back and say, what did you mean when you said that? Or who was this guy talking about the Ukraine to you? At the time, it wouldn't have been important, but later it can be. And a small minority of people, and by the way, these people, the way we have it kind of mapped out, I don't know how much people know about what we're building, but you know, what we're essentially building at its core is a way to kind of use word of mouth and free familiar social tools to build sort of a campaign to first get supporters and then turn them into voters for a particular independent candidate. So give them a chance to get elected. Now, in order to do that at a congressional race, you need something like 200,000-300,000 people to have bought into this concept and gone ahead and voted. Now, when you have 200,000-300,000 people who bought into this, that's a big hurdle, but also it's a big opportunity, because now you can actually draft, you know, 1% of these people is 3,000 people. You can draft them into kind of doing different kinds of monitoring, whether it's a legislation that's coming in that you need some input from the crowd from, or it's you know, you want them to monitor some of the meetings or whatever else, give notes. You can actually, you know, kind of federate that to the citizenry as a civic jury duty. And it doesn't take a lot. It takes, you know, one person, you can call them, and once every 2 or 3 years you get called into this. You're given an opportunity to put in 10-20 hours of time monitoring or giving input to your elected official, and you know you're one of the 1,000 people they're going to listen to on this particular issue, because that's how they do it. That's how we do it. So the idea of having the transparency as a base and having a communication line, and then putting in systems that are commonplace. We have them all over the place in technology, where the few can kind of be can do something and many people benefit from it. You know, ratings are like that. A few people rate and lots of people see the ratings. You know, anyways, there's systems to do this.
Yeah, it is a big challenge having the information clear to everyone, and knowing that the information you're watching on TV and the information you're watching at Facebook, all these media, is it really true? Knowing that it's securing you can have truly information. And in Mexico, there is not this problem about disinformation, but I think in the US, it's really a big problem securing from one media or from another. And there is this controversy about, should I watch Fox News or should I watch CNN? Who is telling the truth? And knowing who's giving you the news and what are they gaining from giving you the news.
Yeah, just building on that last point, Bernardo's point, I think it gets me back to this notion that everything, the way technology is used and or media that's using technology for democracy's purposes or for political purposes or election purposes, we're just starting from a faulty premise. You know, Farhad was talking about systems that are useful in other domains and technology that could, conceivably tap into the crowd to do something, right? And what we're building with the Good Party is we want to create free systems that allow the crowd to identify good candidates that they want to support and elect. But you just extend that out to so many different aspects of democracy and an operational, government for that matter. You think about how the social platforms, whether it's Twitter or Facebook, they've been leveraged for the old system, like just getting Republican or Democratic politicians elected, and or as like little PR one-way communication machines. Like, here's what I want to say, here's the message I want to push out, here's the thing I want to push out. It's all push. There's not a lot of two-way exchanges, let alone, hey, let's just put the information out there in a way that's accessible to all, unvarnished, and then let the crowd, let the masses, let the citizenry engage with it and surprise us about how they might utilize that information or what they might be able to do with that information. Yeah, so just
a nod to Audrey Tang here as well, who was the first person I spoke with about the Good Party after having met her at Radical Markets when I was launching this thing. We built our systems open source based on the same model, in that not just the the open systems for the transparency on the candidate side, but the technology itself should be open source and should be available. And later will be decentralized as well, because centralization is another way that problems arise. So both from attack, being centralized is dangerous, and also from corruption. It's also dangerous because power corrupts everybody. So you have to build yourself out of the system if you want to build a just system, in my opinion. And right now we're not building decentralization, mostly because all the brains are trying to make a buck on DeFi and other kinds of things. It's the usual capitalistic kind of behavior first, but the power of cryptography and this whole decentralized architecture, the blockchain, is decentralized governance. That's where it's going to be, where the people truly become free, where you see your vote, see if it's counted, and you see the total, and everybody you cannot dispute the elections anymore. So we see that one day being worthy of attack, for the Good Party being worthy of attack, and then by that point, hopefully, the systems are ready to decentralize and be worthy of decentralization. The hurdle that you need to cross over to do that is the ratio is not good right now. We're not worthy of attack. It's much easier to build centralized but open source anyway. Get as many people collaborating with us to build, and then at some point we'll open decentralize it completely, and hopefully at that point it goes it's unstoppable.
Yeah, I totally agree with decentralizing. I think if the centralizing department is corrupt, then all our data is corrupted, then, because we cannot trust someone that is centralized. And yeah, I think the data in the future has to be controlled not by a system or by a department, but by the people. We should be the ones that check out that this information we're giving, and we're assuring that this information is true. I think it should be decentralized to people. People should take care of what are they looking and what are they posting and all of this.
Keep in mind also that a lot of people right now, say one of the big risks of Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of the crypto technologies is just governments, and how they will treat this and what they will do, because the governments, all of them are sort of centrally controlled, and by even in America, it's centrally controlled by money. There's $14 billion of money went into electing these two people, and the two of them, whichever side you're on, you could probably imagine we're not the two most qualified Americans to lead us. It wasn't like, wow, these two amazing people, America, 300 million people, these are the two best. They were not. They're not even, in the top, 50 percentile maybe. So maybe 30 percentile. Okay. So the point being that if you're able to decentralize the governance piece and be able to elect your government properly without it interfering, then you can change the rules. Then you don't have to worry about decentralization anymore. It's a phase change because the few will not be able to control the many as they have been from time immemorial by controlling information, controlling elections, controlling the money, controlling, et cetera, controlling, centralizing power. So that's the sexy part of, that's when we're going to have a really good party.
And it's a big challenge. I mean, because by years you have been following the same rules and changing the rules of the game. I mean, it's a total challenge. And I think it's in our hands. You were saying about the digital natives. I think it's in our hands to change the game of the rules. I think it's in our hands.
I would say more than that. It's not just in your hands. If you don't do it, I mean, here's what's happening. Just as a casual observer, there's AI, artificial intelligence. There's automation getting better and better, and there's robotics shrinking things and doing things. So very soon, let's say 50 years at the max. You guys will all still be alive. I might even be alive. Your no blue collar job, no white collar job, like pushing, accounting or law or medicine or any of these. Nothing will be done by mass of hands and feet and labor like this. Nothing. It's not necessary, right? So this is a given fact. Like, this is not going to change. So what is left for humanity to do? Well, you can sort of, there's two choices here. It's there's a lot of surplus going to be coming in terms of time, productivity, everything for everyone. I would suggest that there's an opportunity here to have AI and everything else run the government, run the universe in such a way that humanity as a whole wins and benefits. So you basically, go to Burning Man and be creative with your friends and make love. That's about what you have left to do with your fellow man. That's all there is. Or there's this weird dystopic thing that happens where the few control the resources. Increasingly, right now it's cute. Elon is a cute guy, is doing this and doing that. He can't pretty soon walk into the street without fear for his life. He already probably can't, and over time it'll be egregious, for him that he has this much and many people have nothing. So he becomes worried. He's going to say, I need a sort of these robots and things to protect me from these weird people who want everything, right? So you go into dystopia. The other one is the Terminator scenario, where a few people have everything and everybody else is trash. That doesn't have a purpose. They don't have any productivity. The rules aren't set up for them to do anything. And so the system has to kind of keep them at bay, increasingly yucky ways. Those are the two choices I see. And I think that it's obvious which one we should all be fighting for as humans, So that's sorry to be dramatic again, but that's what I see.
You're not. I mean, we have to take in account all the possible scenarios that can happen, and dystopia is one of them. Utopia is the other. But there are millions of scenarios that can happen.
I don't know if we have time for another question before we do the reflection, but I just want to pose the provocation of reinstating our leverage. I think we've talked a lot about just the different powers that we have, or the lack of power we have in a lot of tech and democracy. And so I think it'd be good to kind of end the conversation off with how can we kind of utilize the leverage that we have and gain more leverage, so to speak, with the infrastructures that exist right now.
Well, I was going to ask a similar question about technology that might not exist quite yet or is being built. I think what this conversation has inspired me to think more about is how can we make our very our 1700 style elections be something that is actually that is reflective of it. It's just like a downstream tool through which we realize visions that we created outside of the fucked up political system, right? So it's going to be a while until our electoral systems actually catch up to the kind of pace and pluralism of our populations, all the creativity, but electoral systems aside, I think we lack spaces where we can even envision what we want from the elections. So that is something that I think in the immediate future we need to figure out, because I think what maybe the good party is also working on this as well, but the good party is great for translating, like getting leaders elected that are better than the leaders of the duopoly, right? But where are we defining the much better future that we're using politics to realize?
Yeah, and let's be clear, the good party is not getting anyone elected as of yet. That's our job ahead of us as we build the tools. So I agree with you that, of course, you have to sort of imagine the world you want for your, but I feel like most people know that what we have right now is not the best that we could have. And, you know, my sense of it is in terms of leverage, all that we are doing with the good party at the moment is building free, familiar tools. So sort of, you've seen GoFundMe. Why isn't there a GoFundMe for votes? You know, so that you can see this guy's campaign page. You can see how many votes he needs. You can say how many people are saying are willing to vote for him, and you can pass it on to other people. You know, what we call an endorsement. So the other part of leverage that digital natives kind of natively understand is influence. You know, some people are influencers. They're not influencers. You know, everyone isn't Lady Gaga or, you know, whomever is you know, 100 The Rock or whatever, but everyone has some influence. And if you can endorse a campaign or political candidate or get involved that way and share it with even just your family, even your parents and your cousin, you know, that's suddenly one person connecting to 5 people. And if those 5 people do it again 2 or 3 times, this person is getting elected. And so, you know, the idea of leverage through social tools that are familiar to everyone. And then, of course, we're building the good party as a brand. You know, we're not a political party, so no politicians allowed kind of thing. So try to build a brand that people can identify with, especially younger digital natives. So that's also a kind of leverage, so that as people see a good party kind of endorsed or certified person get elected, they can get behind. Lots of people are motivated by someone like AOC. She's in Brooklyn. She's in one district in Brooklyn, but people see that lady doing the things she's doing and they're like, wow, that's amazing. That's just hope through a credible plan. So, you know, other Justice Democrats can do better because of her. And we're hoping that as we build something and actually win an election and show a path for an independent candidate to get in there, the good party brand, it becomes a form of leverage. And the kids, you know, you guys start to feel like, wow, we actually have a lot of power, you know. Reddit was a nice example as well in the financial area recently, where, you know, a bunch of, you know, non-professionals are, you know, getting the hedge fund managers worried and whatnot. And I hope we do similar things for the political professionals. I hope we can disrupt them.
Yeah, the other thing that comes to mind for me, I mean, Farhad, you did a nice job of talking about the different leverage opportunities there to reinstate leverage, I guess. The other thing I just feel like we can't forget, and certainly your generation shouldn't forget, is like, don't put the existing sort of duopoly or status quo politicians or whatever it is on too much of a pedestal, right? Because what we saw in the last 4 years is like the curtain pulled back entirely on, you know, where's their integrity, where are there, you know, systems that people are really out for good versus out for themselves. And while nobody would say, hey, you know, what Trump did is the model going forward, not at all, not my point. It's more a point of saying, look what happened when an outside force, a disruptive force, you kind of injected itself into the system that there is. From one perspective, he put the red, Republican brand on and completely kind of hijacked that party, right? And you watched all of those existing status quo politicians just kind of fall in line, right, with whatever he was doing. And hey, he's the president now. We want to be in power. Power matters most to us. We think he's on our team. He said he's Republican. We'll just go with it. We'll just do whatever, because he's got all this leverage that he's, got from Twitter and his direct communication to 70, 80 million people. The flip side is like the blue side, right? The Democrats, what did they really do? What moral high ground did they actually grab, or what did they show about being for the people more so than about just trying to wrestle power back, right? And so regardless, when I think about the tools that are available, some of them, which the good party is attempting to build, free tools, but the tools that are available, like, you don't have to wait. Like, your generation doesn't have to wait for anybody. I mean, I know, Gary, I'm thinking about what you said a little bit ago. You said it'll take a long time, for some of these, for this political system to catch up to, some of the stuff that's going on in technology and that kind of thing. I'm not so sure that that's entirely true. If you're, if a younger generation injects a whole bunch of, if several of the people on this Zoom, for example, get themselves elected through power of the crowd, through open, free technology, and get in and become the rule makers, don't underestimate the power to shift the behaviors of those that are already in the system. They don't have a monopoly on good ideas or how to best connect with citizens and serve. And so if even a small cohort is able to get in and represent something significantly different and talk to people in a way that has to do with kind of redesigning the rules of society, being independent of those parties, I bet you'd be surprised at how fast some of those careerists just fall right in line and start saying, oh yeah, I want to be good. I want to be good. So just one perspective.
I think I'm always hesitant to like pin change on like an individual or like a small collective of people, but I do like that we can almost use them as like data points or reference points to kind of encourage those who are like deeply ingrained, that there are alternatives and those alternatives are actually really effective. And to what you just said about like AOC, that kind of trope has already played out in the sense that, like, AOC was kind of like a data point of like, hey, you can like, speak on these issues really boldly, and, gain leverage. And then you have career senators, like I think his name is Ed Markey. Someone here might know better. And he and AOC kind of collaborated on a bill, and it was like, so you can see how like it's almost like playing into people who are careerists, and it can actually be really effective. Like you can act as data points to kind of convince people, which is cool.
Exactly. Yep.
Cool. Should we move to reflection?
Yeah, I was just about to say, I'm gonna copy the link to the notes and send them in the Zoom chat so that you all can look over them and think about your reflection. And I can just go ahead and get us started off. A lot of things I was thinking a lot about in the beginning of the conversation in relation to transparency and information overload, and wondering, based on something that Farhad said, like if we even need to create incentives for people to dig deep on a lot of things that politicians are doing, it just like by virtue of the fact that that information is out there, it already changes so much of the culture and the system. And then also, this conversation got me excited for the potential of a tech platform like the Good Party, utilizing technology to create a system to where instead of people deciding that they want to run, people like nominate who they want to run. Because like, we talk about people, like Gary said something in the chat about like people who we pick from people who are electable. Farhad said something about like certain candidates not being the best of the best. And so I see technology as a way moving forward to where we truly can pick from the best of the best, because that's what our elected officials should be.
I can jump in. So I was just listening to an interview with, I was looking at old interviews of Jesse Ventura. And I like him a lot. I don't know enough about him to make a judgment about whether he was a good governor or not of Minnesota. But I believe he was he a wrestler before?
Yeah, he was
Wrestling Federation, like not an Olympic wrestler, but more like
Got
a
it. Yeah. So
professional
like,
wrestling.
absolutely.
And,
so
Along
like
with the Iron Sheik. Yes.
oh, that's incredible. So what he taught. Have you talked to him?
No, I have
Okay,
not, but he's a good guy.
So he says the word independent like every 10th word, which is smart. So he talked about how he ran because he felt like he needed to, because he was better than the career politicians that were running like for the similar position of governor. And he talked about himself as a statesman versus a politician. So a statesman does stuff outside of politics, comes in when the duty calls, and then goes back to like the private world afterwards. And I just, what struck me there was we don't talk about that archetype of person that gets involved in politics because they're called to it, because this is the right time for them to be involved. And I think that we should talk more about that. And that relates directly with the whole nominate idea, right? Because there are certain people, like the type of president that is needed, or a governor or a mayor in a pandemic time, is very different from a type of governor, right, in a prosperous, like healthy time, right? I think Gavin Newsom is like the most hated governor right now, for like whether or not that makes sense or not. But I would imagine that he would have been a lot more popular and been a lot more prepared to govern not during a pandemic.
Building on that point, and I do agree that there is we've had the nominated candidate even on the first version of the first site to the Good Party. And again, I'm saying if you have 300,000 people, 200,000 people needed to elect somebody, you're going to find easily somebody in there and draft them. We have a whole plan of how we would down the line draft people to come into office, because many of the best people would not think about going into politics ordinarily, simply because it's a thankless job, and they look at it as a yucky business, correctly, because it is a yucky business right now. But drafting people into office, or nominating someone who then competes with a whole bunch of others out of a huge pool, is the way democracy should work. It's ideal. That said, the goal here for us is this might be a 10-year sort of a journey to that type of a thing, but the next step here for us is to build hope, real hope for something different through a credible plan. And that is sort of the free familiar tools, building a brand that people can look at and trust, and then growing it with sort of organic social promotion of people using their influence, digital natives and other creatives using their influence to tell others and get someone in and say, wow, we really have power. Like, we do have this power. And that's the next step for us. So while I love the future kind of thing, the point Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, a bunch of points in between to connect the dots, and we have our head down. One of the things that I should say really is exciting about this conversation and everyone that we've had with Gary and team and thinking about Civics United down forward is the notion that you guys are committed and into it, which is one of the questions you ask: do they care? Do the digital natives care? And it's cool to see you do, and we'll build together, hopefully.
I want to call out something that Ashley dropped in the chat before she had to bounce. She's actually chatting with our partner at the Ethereum Foundation right now. So it's a very appropriate reflection she did. The conversation about decentralization was interesting because decentralization is about trust. blockchain allows you to coordinate with people who may not fully trust without the need of institutions. But thriving local communities, individuals, aka the smallest components of democracy, do rely on trust. So how do we respect trust while decentralizing? And so that's a really great question for a future trek.
I think so much of this conversation was both steeped in like recognizing where the democratic system has kind of like cultivated that level of distrust or like no reason to have genuine hope for our democratic systems in the future. And I love how technology really does have the capacity to kind of fill in those gaps. Because the idea that like we can trust the democratic system to fix itself for the same reasons that like they have created reasons for distrust in the past. I love how we can almost like infuse technology as a way to kind of hold the democratic system accountable and then also fill in those gaps in a way that's like really responsive to the people, the world, and just like our understanding of what are things that we can build that actually work. So I loved this conversation. I think that this is duality that needs to be talked about more often, for sure.
This is like a small point, but I loved towards the beginning, the point that was brought up from the Good Party guys, talking about kind of like how we can do Command F within a paper and find a word or whatever we're looking for, how within videos, especially like within our democracy and like all those meetings would be so useful because that's not bite-sized information and like it takes people to dig to find certain information and share with others. So that would be super useful for people wanting to get more into the nitty-gritty of things, but also on a bigger point, like obviously we want to use technology to better our experience, and I don't think it was dramatic at all bringing up the point about like basically the good and bad of the future with AI and everything. I think that's something that needs to be a bigger conversation, like the forefront of everything. So I'm glad you brought that up as well.
Yeah, I have a similar idea from Julia. I think we have been choosing another path from what Greek democracy was at some point. We're now choosing candidates rather from their political party than from their ideas and who they are and what they can apport to our society. And I think that is in our hands, choosing a candidate for their ideas, for what they represent, to represent us as a people, rather than just choosing them from being red or blue. And Spanish writer says, although if nothing changed, if I change, everything changes. The change starts with one, and even though you may not have an impact, you can change the way you view the world. So yeah, I think we should go step back to what Greek democracy was and choose our candidates for their ideas rather for their political party.
Yeah, I love that. I'll build on that. I mean, I'm always kind of fascinated by, there's all these books out there about habits. And then there's like, we think about technology and our habits, and people think about technology and hacks. And then people are always trying to hack their habits so that they're more, whatever, more in shape, eating better, more productive, all these different things. And something that recently struck me and what gets me super excited about working with you guys, and I hope, we have continued discussion and ways to co-create this. When I say you guys, I just mean Civics Unplugged and the kind of this representing this youngest generation. You have the ability right now to shape your own habits. You have this opportunity to sort of design, how do we want to engage with democracy, right? Where to the extent that technology hasn't necessarily been put to good use yet for democracy and how you engage and how we engage. The America, we have a lot of bad democracy habits right now. Like we engage once every 2 or 4 years. We look at social media for news, or we watch mass media for the news, and we react but like, that's it. Like, that's our habits. And so I think about you guys, and I think about people talk about technology and all the bad that it can do, and sort of how we have all these bad habits and we're always looking at our phones and we're always this, but it's like, well, what if we flip that and say, hold on, like, we can design a technology that makes us have good civic habits, that make us more engaged and more productive, and then therefore get better results. But Bernardo, I like the point. It still kind of starts with yourself. Like, so you guys, I think, are taking ownership of this idea of civics as a thing that matters. And so we're excited about building technology alongside you, and let's figure out the best way. There's a lot of blame and anger about what Facebook has done or Twitter has done. And those things were not designed to be civic engagement tools. We, for one, are building a civic engagement tool. Many others will, some of you will, but the opportunity to design technology to almost guarantee great civic engagement habits, that's what I'm most excited about and working with you guys on.
Wow, I love this conversation and everything the Good Party's doing in terms of just like more power to the people in terms of technology and democracy. And just wanted to ask one last question, or if this was your first trek, what were your thoughts on the trek overall?
I love the idea of a trek because it is a trek. It's a pain in the ass, and everything I've ever done in my life to get anywhere has been a schlep or a trek. It's not a one trick kind of a thing. And I think there's the questions and things that are being brought up, and just when you're on a trek, if you've ever done anything like that, as a team, the people you're with and who's helping with what piece makes a huge difference. And I think just contextualizing it, when I was doing this with setting up the team, everybody's looking at like Flipagram 6 days after you launched it at #1 in the US, and then became TikTok, man, that's amazing. But they didn't look at the 7 years where it was dot spots, and then we pivoted to Gripe, and then we pivoted to Cheers, and then we pivoted to Flipagram, and 6 days later, 7 years and 6 days later, suddenly it was a thing. So I contextualize it that the flat part of an exponential curve is flat. It's nothing is happening. It's like this, and then it shoots up at some point. And that you don't know time. That could be 1 year, it could be 10 years, but you're on a trek, and it's a marathon, and whoever you're with and the grit that they have and the determination they have to be able to overcome the obvious and crazy obstacles in the way until you overcome them. And they were like, oh, it's so obvious that this could have been done. It was done. That's what I got out of this. I'm excited that you are all thinking about this at your age. I certainly wasn't, and I'm happy to be able to help any which way that we can, whether it's with the Good Party or with any of the projects that you're working on, and how we can be unplugged with you. So sorry about the Civics United, Civics Unplugged. All right, that's my 2 cents. Thank you so much for having us on.
Yeah, I'm a first timer, and I've loved it. I mean, I love the idea that this happens over and over again. And like, I don't know which one you're on now, if this is like 30 something or what it is, but just the idea that this is happening, that you guys are coming together and talking about these things in this kind of systematic way. And to Farhad's point about that, that curve and that exponential, like, what about the compounding effect of these, right? Like I'm excited about what that might be over time, and however you expand it, however you extend it. I was just thinking as we were having this conversation, I was like, oh, is the trek a thing for Clubhouse? Is that going to be next? Clubhouse treks? And like, so whatever you do, the idea, like, I don't think enough people know or realize that there's people that care like you do about civics and are willing to have these conversations, carve out time to actually talk about this. And then, oh my gosh, what about the impact of doing that over time? It's inevitable that it will be impactful. So keep it going.
Yes, trek number 35. And it's actually a couple months too, so hoping to get that number up. But loved having you all here. It was so amazing to have just your insights and experience, and it'd be great to have you back on in the future if you're up for it. So just let us know. But thank you all for taking the time out of your day and for the amazing conversation. And I will see you all later.
Yeah, be in touch. Talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon. All right, bye.